Hello and welcome to this reaction video to the GOP sure hates queer people. So today I'm going to be reacting to some more news this video on the American Republican Party being a mix of transphobic, homophobic, biphobic and all these sort of things when it comes down to the Republican Party. The Republican Party is a pretty terrible party, no offense meant to any Republican Party members out there. You know, your party is kind of evil. That's not necessarily your fault. Just because you're in Egypt for joining doesn't mean that, that you're evil. Although, maybe you should leave. Anyway, basically all I'll say is, let's go ahead and dive into the video. Because, that's what I'm doing. I'm intending to watch the video. Oh, a little bit of delay there.
Hey, you folk! Here's some news. Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis f***ing hate queer people.
They do.
Goodbye. I'm just tickling your nuts. There is more video.
There's no need for that.
Oh, we have fun here. We have fun here. I mean, except when we...
Well, I don't.
Talk about crime or the IRS or racism or war, or in this episode, a horrendous removal of human rights that's being currently attempted by the GOP, who, as I said, sure seem to f***ing hate queer people.
True.
In fact, we can just go ahead and make that the title of the episode.
Yeah! Grace.
Good title. Strong, direct, lots of E's and O's, or shoot, maybe it's more complicated than saying the entire GOP hates queer people, but also, counterpoint. Maybe it isn't. Maybe there's...
I think inherently out there, this is a thing which people always fail to realize, which is that the Republicans, not all of them, but some of them, are Nazis. They just are. Well, no, they're not exactly Nazis. Some of them aren't anti-Semitic now. But the point is, they're kind of very similar to Nazis. Basically, they have themselves, and then they go, okay, everyone who isn't us, you know? And what that does, you see, is that that causes a problem when you give them power. Because then, instead of them being like, these people, they're like, oh no, these people are going to be, we're enacting policy. By the way, you're next. And that's the thing people always seem to miss when it comes to this, which is that you will be next. You will be the next person. You shall be the next on the chopping block. So if you're a Republican person out there and you're, a woman or, not white or anything like that, basically if you're not, a rich, white, cis man who's also straight, then you're fucked, okay? Because, sure, they might be not attacking you right now, although they kind of are. They kind of are. So you're kind of a bit stupid if you're still supporting them. You will be the next on the chopping block. Once they've dealt with people now, they'll deal with you then. Chop, 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 chop. Well, they already are, of course, dealing with, they're stripping away rights for women, they're stripping away rights for people who aren't white and all these sort of things. But, it'll be more directed. They'll absolutely strip away your rights. And don't you worry, at some point, most likely, we may see just, actual out and out, like Nazism, basically. Who knows? Or maybe it'll be more subtle. Who knows? Like boiling a frog. Anyway, let's go ahead and just continue on watching. Just to get a warning out there to all the people who aren't LGBTQ plus or but are actually in those groups that are, going to be absolutely slaughtered by the Republican Party. You will be next. So maybe wisen up a bit.
Some conservative people out there who claim to be cool with the L's and G's and B's and T's, but if those people still support and vote for the GOP, then guess what?
Because the thing is, right, and this is the thing I've talked about before, which is like, just because, you'll see this from fascist Republicans, like, the radical left, like, it's not left wing to not be a piece of shit, okay? It's just not. It would be nice if that was the case, if it meant that every single person who wasn't left-wing was a piece of shit. But actually, just because you're, right-wing doesn't necessarily mean you're always a piece of shit. Of course, the GOP are made up of pieces of shit, but that kind of thing. Basically, what I'm saying is, inherently, conservatism does not necessarily mean homophobia. It does not necessarily mean that. But what the GOP has done is make it mean that. So inherently, yeah. Basically, you can have the attitude of, oh no, don't you worry. The reason why we're discriminating against you is not because you're gay. It's because you're poor. So that's why we're going to make you work down that mine. That's the reason. It's not homophobia. It's just the fact that you don't have the money. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, you can have that system. And that's what a lot of conservatives would want. But not what the UP wants. The UP is more, they're more like, Although, I guess maybe if someone was rich, yeah, they'd probably be fine with them. I don't know. Which comes first, I wonder.
And if you don't think the GOP is launching a serious attack against the rights of the queer community, then double guess what? They super are. Most notably, on March 11th, a Texas judge temporarily halted statewide investigations of parents with transgender children. This was after Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered state officials...
Disgusting, man. Absolutely disgusting.
...to consider gender-affirming healthcare for trans youth, care like puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy, as child...
Which, by the way, are reversible.
...abuse.
Yeah, that's kind of stupid.
The judge in question, Amy Clark Meacham...
I don't think it would be child abuse. Seems like child abuse to stop that, actually. It's like someone breaks their leg and you go, yeah, you get away from that child! You get away from that child! What are you doing, huh? Trying to cure its leg? No! You have to break it again. Yeah. Because if you try and save the child's leg, you're a child abuser? That seems, Greg, you're kind of covering up something of your own, isn't it? Because that seems like what you're doing is child abuse. Greg, maybe you're the one who's abusing children and you're trying to hide it. Pointing the fingers, is it, Getting a bit flustered when people realize that you are just a child abuser. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay, guys. We're just gonna take you outside the bar and just, it'll just be one quick, and then it'll all be over. Don't worry, Greg.
Ruled that Abbott's actions were unconstitutional due to the
Greg,
order.
It'll be quick as we'll just get your head and just instant. It's just we can't really have you being like talking about child abuse when you that's exactly what your law does though.
Violating the separation of powers by impermissibly encroaching into the legislative domain.
Like, it doesn't even... It's not like, that's immoral, actually, Greg. That kind of breaks human rights laws. Instead, it's like, no, you can't do that, Greg, because you don't have the power to break human rights laws.
So while this ruling is unquestionably good, it's more about whether or not Abbott himself has the authority to pass legislation like this than it is any kind of official verdict on the legitimacy of trans health care. It's like issuing a health code violation on a deli serving human meat. And of course, this ruling is already being challenged. So it's still good for the moment, but also an extremely minor victory on a much larger and more horrifying scale. Like a deli scale, built to weigh human meat. You see, despite this one order being overturned, this move is just a small part of a much larger wave of anti-trans and LGBTQ legislation sweeping across America right now. Remember that wave from Deep Impact that killed Tasha Yar? It's exactly like that, but evil. Like that evil goo in Star Trek that also killed Tasha Yar. In 2022 alone, nearly 240 anti-LGBTQ bills have killed Tasha Yar.
See, the thing is, America is a country that I would advise, at this point, no one to go to. Maybe if you're very, 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 very rich, but...
Sorry, rule of threes had to do it. Okay. In 2022 alone, nearly 240 anti-LGBTQ bills have been proposed by state legislators so far, a huge increase from the 41 similar bills filed in 2018, and up as well from the 191 bills proposed in all of last year.
Yeah.
A number that was so large that it had prompted some advocates to label 2021 as the worst year in recent history for queer rights. And now this year is significantly worse only 4 months in. That'll show those advocates, aha, take that! Because if the 2020s taught us anything, it's that everything could always get significantly worse if you just, wait a minute.
Oh, I already knew that.
Anyway, a great deal of these bills are wrapped in the disguise of protecting religious rights, specifically the right
Which
to
is bullshit.
discriminate against other people, effectively declaring religious rights to have priority over LGBT.
Or human rights, actually. I always do wonder, if I went to America and, and I just, started just, eating people. And I was like, well, in my religion, I'm supposed to do this. It would be actually against my religion to stop me. In fact, it would mean that you'd go to hell. That's what it would mean. The thing is, right, is that that would be, one thing. Let's break it down into 2 parts. Part 1 is I actually believe that. And part 2 is I believe that, but that's because someone else wrote the teaching. Someone actually wrote that in there in order so that they could get away with cannibalism. Now, the problem with teaching number 2 is that that's exactly what the Christian religion happened to the Christian religion, rather. The Christian religion was taken over by propagandists and people who wanted to have power, who said, you know what, let's just write about a bunch of stuff. That's why Christmas is around December and not around February, when it actually should be. Because they were like, okay, we want the Germans to be part of our religion. Okay, we'll change the dates of Christ's birth to this. Okay, we want this kind of thing. So we'll move Christ's birth back by a couple of years. Okay, so all this changing was done so that they could push and expand the actual base of their religion more and more. The problem with that, of course, is that the more and more you push, and the more you change the religion, the more and more it becomes less the teachings of religion and more just a cult that you like to have control over. And this is why people changed the actual parts of the Bible from, in the English translations, for example, from having things such as having socialist viewpoints to being a little less socialist and a little less things, when actual Jesus was kind of seen as a bit of a socialist at the time. All these sort of things here, so that now realistically, if you are a rich person, someone who wants to have capitalism, you're not a Christian. You're lying to yourself if you want to say you're a Christian. You just are. If you're homophobe and you're saying it's your religious rights, you're lying to yourself, because that's not the actual teaching of Christ. That's the teaching of the new religion. So you gotta have bullshit there. That's not religion. You're believing a bunch of shit someone else wrote so that they could have power. So that's that. So can I make that argument for any religion? All I need is someone else to write religion, and boom, there you go. I say, well, this is my religion. So yeah,
Hugh writes, in several states, we're seeing bills allowing people to deny adoption to same-sex couples. Kentucky is...
Interestingly, same-sex couples tend to actually have, children have better lives than the same-sex couples. Some people have argued that's possibly because of, homophobia, meaning that, same-sex couples find it harder to adopt, so there's a lot more, security involved. But on average, still, at the end of the day, same-sex couples do end up having children and are happier. Yeah. Just saying. So,
trying to allow government officials to refuse to acknowledge gay marriage based on their beliefs, despite being, government officials. And a handful of states are dabbling with the idea that healthcare professionals should have the right to refuse treating people based on their personal beliefs.
That's eugenics.
Which is just so incredibly vague and weird that it could be used to discriminate against literally anyone. And in Tennessee, they passed a law effectively forcing businesses to have a trigger warning on their doors if they happen to have co-ed toilets for, I guess, any snowflake who doesn't understand the concept of family bathrooms.
The thing is, right, is that... God...
Tennessee also tried and failed to pass a bill that would, quote, prohibit officials from creating, enforcing, or endorsing policies that respect or promote non-secular, self-asserted, sex-based identity narratives.
Wow.
And, I have no fucking clue what that is supposed to mean. It's
that's literally just you can't accept people for who they are. Fucking Christ.
like the cloud atlas of laws. Most of these bills are so ridiculously vague and weird that they appear to ban everything and nothing, which we will certainly talk about in a bit. Not only that, but almost half of the bills put forward this year specifically target transgender people, with a large chunk of those prioritizing, or at least claiming to prioritize, the health and well-being of trans children. So today, we're gonna talk about all of these bills, what they're trying to do, about how and why they're being proposed at such a high velocity all of a sudden. Also, we might reference Cloud Atlas at least once more, maybe Jupiter ascending. We'll see how we feel.
Please don't.
And let's start, if we have to, with the currently blocked Texas bill, which is technically the least bummer story in that it hasn't happened yet. So that's good? Sure. Okay, so the Texas order that Governor Abbott is still fighting to enact would call on both licensed professionals and members of the general public to report parents of transgender children as child abusers if those children had received gender-affirming care. Not only that, but the order came as part of a letter from Abbott to the Department of Family and Protective Services, in which he asked the department to conduct a prompt and thorough investigation into the families of any minors undergoing elective procedures for transition. Now, we've already done a whole episode on the way anti-trans advocates use the "what about the children" narrative to obfuscate
Which is bullshit.
their puritanical conservative attitudes towards gender and sexuality, and we would probably make a whole other video about other ways that transphobic ideology is wrong and bad. In fact, make more videos. Alright, but it bears worth repeating here. Puberty blockers are broadly reversible and cause no meaningful harm. What's more, gender-affirming care, including puberty blockers as well as hormone replacement therapy and gender confirmation surgery, is shown to noticeably improve quality of life and decrease depression and suicidal ideation in trans adolescents. And, most importantly, being transgender isn't a problem we need to prevent or fix, and parents trying to affirm their children's identity aren't being abusive, Greg, you fucking Gumby. According to the failing New York Times...
Greg is the child abuser. We all know that. Like Greg is I'm not accusing him of anything. I'm just saying, like, you know, if he has a basement, raid it maybe. Cause just saying, you know, if you start talking about child abuse and then you start abusing children with your laws, it seems a bit weird. It's like, oh sure, Greg, kind of compensate him for something. Are we alright? You like abusing children, do you? And you just like push off on the people. Yeah, no, not me, it's them. You know, that kind of thing. Seems dodgy.
Abbott's order managed to sow chaos and confusion amongst trans families and their medical providers before it was temporarily halted.
True.
Dr. Megan Mooney, a licensed psychologist whose clients include transgender children, as well as a plaintiff in the case to halt the order, testified to there being outright panic as the order caused children and their families to fear for their safety.
Yeah. And what's going on?
Safety, and forced medical professionals to choose between their legal duties and moral obligations. One mother, an employee of Texas's Family Protection Agency, who showed up to court in goddamn disguise, testified to being terrified for her trans daughter's health and well-being. And Rio Grande Valley resident Adamalis Vigil told the Texas Tribune that her 13-year-old trans daughter, Adeline, is so terrified she will be forcibly separated from her mother that she doesn't even want to sleep in her own bed. Because in Texas, being found guilty of child abuse can come with a first-degree felony conviction and up to 100 years in prison and or a fine of $10,000, which seems pretty problematic when you start defining child abuse as stuff I don't like.
100 years.
Bad. Yeah, it says it right here. It's bad. Not to mention, of course, that it also means having your child taken away
100 years. America really needs to sort out its legislation because some of its laws are just like they really need to sort out because it's just like some laws just like, oh yeah, we found some drugs in your pocket, you go to prison for 20 years. Oh, okay, that they were smoking weed for recreational purposes. Okay, that's a bit harsh. And next is like, oh, you did this horrible act where you killed like hundreds of thousands of people. Oh, you go for six months. Seriously, fucking Christ. And then this just like, oh God, 100 years, like,
state, and presumably prevented from continuing the often life-saving processes of hormone replacement therapy and gender confirmation surgeries. And so when this potential law causes a wave of panic and fear from the people it claims to protect, you kind of have to wonder if it's perhaps not at all actually a law designed to protect those people. Maybe it's a bad shitty law aimed at pleasing a base of voters who simply don't like transgender people, all at the expense of kids and parents who just want to live their lives.
Well, you would notice I have 3 thriving children. The issues we're facing right now are not things that we have to deal with on a regular basis. My daughter she loves riding her bike, she loves swimming, she loves hanging out with her friends, playing Pokemon Go, all the things that you would
don't play Pokemon Go.
Expect from a 12-year-old who's happy. And you'll have to forgive me because it's pretty hard for me to talk about this without tearing up because it's just been such an awful couple of weeks.
Can you imagine being a parent suddenly told by the state that you might have your happy and healthy kids taken away from you because a group of politicians decided that your existence is wrong and bad? It's honestly Sisypheanly hard to express just how intentionally cruel and dishonest this ongoing conservative attempt to over trans kids and their families is. But of course, here at Cody's Shody, we love nothing more than pushing huge rocks up various hills and inclines, as well as talking about the hit film Jupiter Ascending. Out now in 2015. On top of everything we've already mentioned, Abbott's order was prompted by a non-binding legal opinion from Attorney General Ken Paxton, released only a few days
also terrible fella
earlier, in which Paxton argued that gender-affirming care constitutes child abuse. The opinion is, unsurprisingly, full of shit. Not only does Paxton claim that care widely accepted by leading healthcare groups like puberty blockers are abusive, but he also cites as examples things like...
I think Paxton might have been reading the wrong thing. No, you see, Paxton... No, I know reading is hard, but I do it a lot, so I'll explain it to you. So basically, you see, when the text said, okay, if a child doesn't get access to puberty blockers because you stop them, it's effectively child abuse. They weren't calling the puberty blockers child abuse, they were calling you a child abuser. Do you understand? You know? They're calling Abbott a puberty. They're calling him a puberty blocker. He was trying to do that, because he was trying to block the puberty blocker. So that means he would be the child abuser. Do you understand? I know it's complicated, but basically, it's just a bit of misunderstanding there. You might want to just understand how psychology and medicine works, and just basic life.
Body modification surgery, a process which is rarely, if ever, performed on children. Paxton's opinion statement has been criticized alongside Abbott's directive by various medical and human rights organizations, including the Endocrine Society, an international medical organization for the field of endocrinology, which said the conservative argument rejects evidence-based transgender medical care. But of course, this isn't about evidence, nor is it about actually getting these laws through. By doing this, they are sending a signal to both their base, but especially to parents of trans kids, that by allowing your child to pursue their own personal happiness, the government is going to make their lives as hard as possible. Because the GOP loves interfering with the lives of families, right? It's like their motto says, tread on me harder, big government, P.S. we hate families. Seems long, but, that's the grand old party we know and tolerate. See, while Paxton's statement was non-binding and Abbott's orders currently blocked, that doesn't mean their words don't have weight and impact when they come from important elected officials. And like we said before, Abbott's order was only blocked on the grounds that it was an overreach of the executive branch, not on the grounds that it was evil and dishonest, because apparently morality is subjective and a functioning democratic system can't base its legislative process on how good or evil a law is, because that's just not how it works, or something.
Also, I think if your democracy votes for transphobia, you need to burn your country to the ground.
Oh no, I refuse to read a book. Or can't read, except for the teleprompter, which reads, "The point is, while it kicks absolute ass that Judge Meacham told Abbott to shut the fuck up, you awful piece of shit, all it would take to actually pass legislation that does the same thing as Abbott's order would be for enough Texas legislators to believe the same hateful lies that Abbott and Paxton believe. And unfortunately, the only way to stop that from happening is to use that same legislative system to pass bills that explicitly protect trans people and permanently enshrine their rights into law. So, phew, good thing the legislative processes in this country are simple and fast-acting.
And not controlled by conservatives at all. Oh, wait.
Right? Right. Okay. Moving on from the good news. That was the good news. Jesus frogs. All right. Well, here's some
don't be like that.
worse news. On March 28th, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, yuck, 0 stars, signed into law Bill
Corrupt
HB
fella.
1557, Parental Rights in Education Act, or as virtually everyone has decided to call it, the Don't Say Gay Bill. In its preamble, HB 1557 claims that one of its goals is to prohibit classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in certain grade levels or in a specified manner. The precise
My
word-
God. Or, and what does that mean? You know, is that just up into interpretation? You know, I mean, once again, it's a good thing that the courts aren't controlled by conservatives. Oh, yeah, no, they are, yeah. Yep, so.
wording in the law later states, again, exact quote, "Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards." The bill goes on to give parents the ability to sue a school district if they believe this law has been violated, stating, if a concern is not resolved by the school district, a parent may bring an action against the school district to obtain a declaratory judgment that the school district procedure or practice violates this paragraph and seek injunctive relief. A court may award damages and shall award reasonable attorney fees and court costs to a parent who receives
reasonable.
Declaratory
like what? How much?
I want to be crystal clear with the text of this law because one of the extremely baby-brained responses from the right.
Oh, wait. It's not enough. They don't say gay bill. You guys call it bill because okay, that's terrible grammar, Ben. Play stupid games with win stupid prizes. If you decide to become a tool to advance private. Okay. Let's break down this. So, you see, the problem is, Ben, is not... Okay, let's break this down. So, let me see. Okay, can libertarians accept transgender youth? Yes, they can. Can fascists accept transgender youth? No, they can't. Okay, so let's see. So, that's the thing. So, the radical left. Okay. So, Ben, if we're talking about the left, right? And basically, the only people not left of transphobes are fascists. Doesn't that kind of make you, Ben, a fascist? You can't really call yourself a libertarian and be against, you know, like, be homophobic. You can't be homophobic and be libertarian. Because inherently, if you're being a libertarian, then must you inherently be accepting of everyone? You know? You can do as you like. So Ben, you're not really a libertarian now, you're just a fascist. That's the thing, Ben. You're just a little fascist, because the problem with the statement radical left is that it kind of misunderstands. If something is radical left, so it's left than you, but then your ideology is, you know, very right wing, we have to just assume, okay, so you're right from this. Okay, so but being right from transphobia is fascism. So basically, to break it down, Ben Shapiro is a fascist.
Has been to either smugly declare that the bill doesn't literally say the word gay, or to simply deny the bill is aimed at teachers.
So there is no Don't Say Gay bill. That is a lie. Disney employees are not adversely affected by Florida parental rights in the education bill. And the vast majority of Americans, when told what the gay bill when told the bill actually does, agree with it. Do they now? Do they? When told what the bill actually does, I think most Americans haven't been told what the bill actually does. And they're definitely not by you, Ben. Basically, also, can I put out the fact that if it doesn't say gay, Ben, then it bans talking about straight relationships too. Because it's banning the talk of sexual relationships. And if it's banning the talk of sexual relationships, then it must be banning the talk of straight relationships too. So fine, we ban the talk of straight relationships. Now, teachers aren't allowed to talk about their if they're a female teacher, they're not allowed to talk about their any male relationships, and if they're a male teacher, they have to talk about their female relationships. Okay, that's okay. Okay, we'll just do the equal thing. Okay, the problem is kids learn that from at home, won't they? So
talking about being gay. Some have pointed out that while they use the word discussion in the preamble, the law itself swaps that for instruction, as if that somehow makes it better. However, as one law expert pointed out, courts will often look at the preamble of a law to help them interpret the enforcement of it.
Yeah.
Not to mention the extremely broad wording in all of this. Does it count as instruction for a teacher to explain what a same-sex marriage is? That's technically instructing kids how to get gay married. And did you notice that this prohibits teachers from instructions for kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards?
Super vague.
As legal experts have pointed out, this law doesn't list what those state standards are, nor what counts as age appropriate. It's vague and weird and seems to leave it up to the parents to decide. And if you have a parent like, I don't know, black conservative Ben Shapiro, who accused body bags Mark Hamill of indoctrinating children by simply spamming the word.
So I don't see Ben. I get highly concerned if you think small children can be, indoctrinated into gender and sexual ideology. That's not what it sounds like. Like if that's your idea, Ben, I think that might make you a pedophile.
Word gay over and over again, well then things get a bit subjective. This doesn't mean that a parent would win a legal battle, but much like Texas's anyone can sue someone for getting an abortion or driving someone to get an abortion law, it's clearly designed to gunk up the system. Because even if a parent's complaint is unwarranted and ultimately loses, it creates a climate where schools and teachers won't want to risk triggering an intentionally vague law for snowflakes that would damage reputations and careers. Just like that Texas trans law, it's designed to send a message to certain people.
Like this just seemed like a very backward thing. Like they removed this law in England a few years back, which was you can't talk about gay relationships in media, or like you can't allow to teach children about it, you can't talk about it at all. So you're allowed to be gay, but you're not allowed to talk about it. Just now.
Supporting LGBTQ kids, they are going to make their lives very difficult. And thanks to the colossal vagueness of it all, the supporters have the added bonus of standing back and acting like supreme logic kings, pretending that their bill is actually not exactly what it seems like.
I'm asking you to tell me what's in the bill because you are pushing false narratives. It doesn't matter what critics say. For who? For grades pre-K through 3. So 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and
or anyone you don't deem age appropriate, which is super vague.
The idea that you wouldn't be honest about that and tell people what.
Can I ask, Ron? Do you think kids are learning about straight relationships at the age of 6? By the age of 6, 7, or 8? Like, do you think they are? Because I remember when I was 6, I remember my teacher, gave obviously they were a male teacher, and their female partner, so they were in a straight relationship, had a child with them, and the thing was that that was me finding out their sexual relationship, Ron. You must go in there, mustn't you? And you must sue the school for that. The teacher telling me all about it. How could they? Oh, wait, yeah. Because that's the thing, Ron, isn't it? Kids learn about straight relationships all the time. I'm at that age, so I really don't see how that's okay, you know?
What it actually says, it's why people don't trust people like you, because you peddle
You're no friend to Ron, but you're a fucking idiot, like. Pretty much every single teacher could be arrested for talking about straight relationships then.
false narrative. And so we just
Well, sorry, not arrested, sued. Apologies, I forgot. Ron likes to have people sued. Why the fuck are these guys clapping?
And we're going to make sure that parents are able to send their kid to kindergarten without having some of this stuff injected into their school curriculum.
I remember I was told about marriage, in, I guess, what it would have been called kindergarten. I wasn't talking about gay marriage, I was talking about straight marriage, but at the end of the day, that's still marriage, you know? That's still against, isn't that against your law, right? Surely it must be, because you're not being homophobic, then...
Checkmate, libs! We sunk your battleship! Uno! Cloud Atlas! Hey, Ron, when you say stuff injected into curriculums, just what are you talking about exactly? If it's not trying to ban teachers from saying gay, what is it trying to ban then? Well, let's dig into that. After a few ads! We love ads just like we love you. And so to deny these ads, you're also denying our love for you. So think about that for a second while these ads play.
Hello, yes, it is me, beloved child star Katie Stoll. You know, when I was working on the hit TV series, My Father is a Basket of Snakes, we had a lot of downtime thanks to the tremendous amount of on-set accidents.
Jesus.
And if you have a lot of downtime at your job, maybe you should check out the mobile game Best Fiends.
Oh, fuck no. Fuck.
Friend,
no.
You should try. Hey there. Are you
Okay.
tired? Maybe you haven't been getting much sleep because your upstairs neighbor hosts improv classes at 6 in the morning.
No, I'm not going to sleep because I have a lot of work to do, you know.
Well, then you need some coffee, my friend.
Yeah.
You should try trade
Drug pushing, I mean.
coffee, to be specific.
Actually,
Trade connects
that
customers-
depends, because some trade coffee companies are honest about it, but most of them, they're like, yeah, we pay workers a fair wage. Well, no, you do. You do that. You pay premium prices so that we can, like, obey human rights. Anyway.
Talking about the infamous Florida Don't Say Gay bill, and how the GOP is claiming that the bill actually has nothing to do with an obvious attempt to limit the rights of LGBTQ students and teachers.
Yeah.
One of the most common conservative talking points from the likes of the Daily Wire is that the evil left-wing mainstream media is wildly misinterpreting the nature of the bill on purpose in order to push their insidious gender ideology.
Once again, left wing does not mean you aren't a bigot. Left wing just means economically left wing and socially left wing would mean you aren't a bigot. But you can be a conservative and still not be a bigot. You know, you're still kind of evil, but just not in a homophobic way.
The Daily Wire pulls the same misdirect as DeSantis, self-righteously pointing out that nowhere in the legislation is the word gay mentioned, though the word parent is mentioned
how many
32
times
and the word
how many times then have parents sued schools for teaching straight relationships? Because apparently the bill prohibits that, the discussion of things like, I'm, you know, if it was in my country, wow, my teachers would have gotten amazing amounts of lawsuits because they were like talking about that a lot. Straight relationships, not gay ones, but you know, still relationships though. You know,
parental is mentioned 7 times in a pretty lazy attempt to make it seem as though the bill is really about parental sovereignty. They're technically not wrong in that the bill focuses a lot on a parent's right to be informed about what their kid is being taught. Except, hey there, buddy! What specifically is this sovereignty about?
Yeah.
Does the bill say that? Oh, right. It's about sexual orientation and gender identity.
Yeah.
This isn't a bill about a parent's general right to know what their kid is being taught. In fact, Florida already passed a bill like that last year. That bill, dubbed the Parents' Bill of Rights, allowed parents to have the right to pull their kids out of any class they deemed inappropriate, as well as have the ability to inspect any sexual education material and have access to their kids' school records. Sure seems like that law would have covered any concerns about parental sovereignty the conservatives are claiming this new law involves, doesn't it? So why introduce a second bill specific to teaching about LGBTQ issues? And if that first bill allows parents to review sex ed material and pull their kids from specific classes, why then have a new bill that gives them the right to sue the school?
I think maybe you would be better off just have a curriculum that schools are required to teach, because like inherently, if it's either a bad thing that your parents are putting their children from sex ed, or if it's a good thing, it's a really bad thing that children are learning bad sex ed, because that's very important.
About one specific topic being discussed. Why can't they also sue over violent material or on religious grounds? Is it because it would be a nightmare to allow parents to sue schools for anything they teach?
Yeah.
Not to mention that by giving one parent the ability to sue over just one topic, you're effectively blocking the sovereignty of all the other parents who want sexual orientation and gender identity explained.
Or like if you have the religion thing, like if I've got children in Florida, how come I can't sue the school for teaching Christianity? I don't write that. That's not true Christianity. That's not what Christ thought. That's in no way what Christ thought. This is corrupting my children. How could you, school? You must not teach Christianity to my children. I'm suing you over this. But that some person wants the school to indoctrinate the children. Okay, well,
to their kids.
Yeah.
How is that allowing freedom for parents?
Yeah.
It's almost as if, and this is a wild thought, I know, but it's almost as if this bill definitely isn't about parental sovereignty.
Yeah.
Florida already has a bill specific to that. And the threat of a lawsuit clearly creates a situation where just one parent can decide for all the other parents what every kid gets to learn about.
Yeah.
But of course, there's a second reason the GOP is giving for why they think this law is absolutely necessary. Are we ready for it?
Jesus Christ.
Oh boy, that is gonna look bad out of context. And I guess
It is,
in
yeah.
context too.
Yeah.
But that's right. P to the E to the defiles. The conservative tradition of associating queerness and homosexuality with pedophilia.
Which is super weird. Because tends to be the case, pedophiles don't tend to have a particular attraction, big shocker, but they're pedophiles. They're not exactly, most of them don't go out with children. I mean, groomers do sometimes, but like pedophiles are step above, if you know what I mean. Like,
Pedophilia has a long and robust history that we don't really need to get into right now. But needless to say, Republicans, famous for refusing to update their rhetorical strategies even a little bit, are back at it again. It, in this case, being accusing LGBTQ people of being pedophiles who...
Here's the thing. There is a difference between a pedophile and grooming. See, obviously, not all pedophiles are groomers. So you would need to want to be specific, because if you're not grooming the child, then you're not attracted to it. It's like beating someone to death. It's like you are committing an awful, awful thing there. But you're not, focusing in on that person in particular necessarily. If you said it's targeted, it's a attack, it's a racial attack, or it's a thing, that would make a difference. That's intent, not necessarily to go after the person, but have to go after a particular type of person. That would be the difference there. And technically speaking, so groomers tend to be for older people as well, but not always. But basically, also another thing is younger children don't tend to have the parts and all these things. It's not a very nice discussion really at the end of the day, but it, if you want to get down to it, you can boy, that's some pretty complicated understanding of like what grooming means when it comes down to it. It's once again that thing of there are creepy people out there. Also, statistically speaking, it's generally more heterosexual people
who want to groom children. In defense of HB 1557, DeSantis' press secretary, Christina Pushaw, argued that the bill merely prevents kids from being exposed to sexually inappropriate content, accusing opponents of the bill
once again though, if that's the case, why exactly do you not hear in the news parents suing over straight relationships being thought about? Because that's learning about that's inappropriate. Why I learned about that though, I believe I was 3 when I first learned about that. So like, come on now. Should my guardians be suing over that and saying, oh no, you can't do that. You don't learn about that. That didn't happen. So
a groomer themselves, or at the very least, someone who supports the grooming of 4 to 8-year-old children. Now, to start, I just want
once again, there are good intentions. This was obviously not good intentions, but even if it was, you still would want to critique the bill, because let's say someone, bans the, consumption of tobacco, for example, and says, okay, we're going to ban the consumption of tobacco. But what they actually do is they also make cocaine legal in the same bill. And someone was to go, well, actually, the bill also allows for cocaine to be legalized. So, or like heroin maybe, I don't know. That kind of thing. Let's say it allows heroin to be sold in just every single shop. So it bans smoking, which is technically a good thing. I mean, although some people would argue, maybe you might want to do a more slower thing. Banning something people are addicted to already isn't a great idea. It's more you should do things slowly. And if children are gonna start taking cigarettes when they're not supposed to, at that point you can just be like, well, disobey the rules and suffer the consequences. You could argue. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but some people would argue if you want to disobey the rules, that's what you mean. But of course, you can't really say, oh, you disobey the rules. Well, if the person is addicted before you introduce the rules, you can't really make the argument. But anyway, getting to the point. The point being is that inherently, even if your bill is, well-intentioned, you still shouldn't just be like, well, it's stopping lung cancer and stopping problems with your esophagus. There's many, many health issues that come from smoking. So what are you talking? Well, but it allows it allows a very bad thing to happen. So even if you honestly thought that this bill actually stopped grooming, which obviously it doesn't, it's the same way people have been like, you can't be going into this bathroom, it's, oh really, yeah, because as we all know, people who commit sexual harassment and assault are always so respectful of the law while they're breaking it. Yeah. They're breaking a law which would sentence them to prison for many years. I don't think they're really going to care whether they're allowed in a bathroom or not, to be honest. Anyway, the point is, at the end of the day, even if you thought this would stop grooming or restricted or anything like that, it still does harm children and still does harm equality, You'd still critique it for that.
I want to point out that pedophilia and sexual abuse and harassment of kids, specifically in schools by teachers or employees,
or other kids,
is a serious problem in this country. By one study, 1 out of 10 students will experience some form of sexual abuse before they hit 12th grade. That fucking sucks and is...
And I have heard stories in my country of students doing that. Because it's always teachers. It's not necessarily always teachers, because at the end of the day, teachers have a much higher chance of not being trusted. Like, who are you going to trust more? A kid talking about a teacher, or a teacher? Oh yeah, because like what do you expect the teacher to say? To side with the kid? No, And you're not going to expect that. So you're just going to, well, yeah, no, you're probably guilty. So a teacher is a lot more likely to go to prison if they're accused than another kid would. Because another kid can be like, no, and all these things. And, it's just inherently, it is always a problem with this. And I've heard stories before. I remember I was having a discussion with a fellow people who said that there was a student who was, they were on a trip, and there was a male student, like, going over to, it was like a sleepover thing, and they were going up to the, female students' bedding areas and, stepping over them and, like, breathing on them and all sorts of disgusting stuff. And I was just like, yeah, you need to put that person on a list. Like, because that kind of action that's a sign of, of problems. That'll come up again, is what I'm saying, probably. Just if that person ever does something again, I have to say that I'm not surprised, to be honest. This happens, and you really need to address that.
Gross. Dare I say, it should not happen.
Yeah, of course not.
But you might notice that the study I just cited is from 2004. And it turns out that this is because the United States has an alarming lack of information about this subject. We don't really have many statistics because no one has bothered to collect them on a federal level.
It's kind of dodgy.
And two reports by the Government Accountability Office found...
In fairness, a lot of politicians in the American system have been found to be pedophiles. So...
The United States isn't doing nearly enough in terms of background checks or other measures to prevent child predators from working in our schools.
Sure.
So if you were, say, a politician who was very concerned about pedophilia and grooming, this is probably where you would actually start.
Well,
you wouldn't make a bill banning sexual orientation discussions, but rather you would be loudly talking about our failure to protect kids or even track misconduct on a federal level.
True.
But what we do know, and again, boy, it's very little, is that a study from 1994 of 352 sexually abused kids found that the perpetrator was, at the highest, 3.1% likely to be a gay or lesbian person. 82% of the time...
To put that in perspective, that would be around 30% adjusted for figures. Around that, adjusted for like population sizes. So yeah, less than half. And by the way, that's adjusted for like population amounts of people who are gay or lesbian. So basically safer than with a heterosexual person. Just pointing that out.
The abuser was a heterosexual partner of a relative of the child. Most of the victims were young girls as well, meaning that from this, albeit limited data, if we insert the information into our Predator-Tron computerized facial creation software, your average child molester from Florida would look something like this. This is all to say that there's just no evidence that the Don't Say Gay bill would do anything at all to prevent pedophilia or grooming by teachers, nor does it seem to actually be a priority of anyone supporting the bill. It doesn't use the word grooming or pedophilia in the text, nor does it line up with any statistics, and is just focused on a ban on teachers' freedom to discuss sexual orientation and gender identity.
Sure.
To claim that it's a ban of sexual material is a lie, because if that was the case, wouldn't the bill say it's a ban on sexual material and not sexual orientation?
Yeah.
You can't just claim a bill does something.
Once again, though, where do we see our straight talking ban? Because as I said, I learned about straight relationships, like specifically in school, in my first year of ever being in a school. So just saying, should my guardians have sued that school then for teaching me about sexual orientation? Because that is sexual orientation, isn't it? That was a heterosexual relationship I was learning about.
Is in no way actually doing that thing. That's called a lie. There's simply no logical connection to the bill and grooming. So where the hell did this even come from? Well, that would be something called Libs of TikTok. Started as like the fourth attempt to go viral by some dipshit named Chaya Rychik. The account was signal boosted by Joe Rogan before devolving into basically an anti-LGBT
Joe Rogan. How delightful.
account, labeling literally any instance of gay people existing around children as grooming. This video of Pete Buttigieg's husband...
I have to say, when you think about it, when you look at, like, the people who go on Joe Rogan, it's... I've talked about this before, and not really in great detail, but when it comes to the online thing, and you hear, like, anti-Semitic people being like, using anti-Semitic things and they talk about the media, you're just like, you are a fucking idiot. Like, seriously, you can't even see the obviousness, can you? You can't even tell. Like, you came so close, but you just had to chuck in the anti-Semitism, didn't you? Like, the kind of thing where you see popular people who are unsavory get platformed on accounts where you would think, well, that's not very unsavory, that's not a very unsavory account, or vice versa. Unsavory accounts platform people who aren't, well, they don't appear to be that bad, Like, I've discussed, like, Mr. Beast before. Like, it appears, as time of recording, he hasn't done anything that bad. Tiny bit of sexism, but beyond that, appears to be okay. But then, the people he invites on in his videos, it's concerning. Because you don't need to invite those people on. If you've got over 100 million subscribers, why would you need to invite those people on? What would be the reason for that? Why? And it's the same thing with Joe Rogan. You see people who go on Joe Rogan and you're like, but why are you there? You know what he's like. You know what he does. And it's not like you're desperate for it. It's not like you need the following. It's not like you have a media career dependent on growth. No. You have enough money coming in as it is. You don't need to be there. It's like when YouTubers take any sponsor they can when they have loads of sponsors. I understand. Obviously, if someone said to me, I'd like to sponsor one of your videos, I might very well accept because I don't have hundreds of potential sponsors coming in. I don't have loads of sponsors coming in. But when you have someone who's got a lot of sponsors and they choose just the one that pays the most, or possibly the one that they angled to pay the most because they said, well, you actually are not very well liked, so I'm going to need you to pay a lot. When you have that, you just think, but why? Why must you platform this person? You are supposedly a trustworthy person. A trustworthy source, someone that we can trust, but you just, each time you look upon it, you go, but you keep platforming people who are not good. That's why I just think, if you're on Joe Rogan, it's not a great sign. It's not a great sign at all. Don't go on Joe Rogan. If you're starving and you need some media coverage, I guess maybe then, but if you're not, if you're pretty popular already, just don't, because otherwise it just makes you look like a bit of a, it just makes you look like you're agreeing with him, that you're okay with what he does. So yeah, that was TikTok. Fuck you.
Leading a pride-themed Pledge of Allegiance at an LGBTQ camp for teens?
One camp, full of pride, indivisible, with affirmation and equal rights for all.
What are they going to say about this?
Apparently that's grooming.
No, it's not grooming. It does feel a bit concerning. It's like political, like, young, Republicans, young. It's like, I don't think, there's a certain point where it's like, it's beginning to cross into, Hitler Youth. But, but I don't necessarily think how would you jump from, like, that to grooming. It's okay.
This video of a teacher talking about coming out as trans to her students?
So none of the kids knew me as trans, but I wanted to talk about it. So what I did is, as soon as I came back, I joined up with the GSA, realized how many questions the kids had and decided the best thing to do would be to host a Q&A.
Grooming again.
So, if a kid, or kids plural, asks a question of someone, and the question is not inappropriate, it's not stupid, and the person is willing to answer, then what the teacher there is doing is yeah, I think if anyone's doing anything, it would be the kid, isn't it? Like, it's the kids, because they're the ones asking the potentially uncomfortable to the person's questions. You know? Like, as far as I can tell, the closest people to grooming in that scenario would be the kids. Just saying. Maybe Liz at TikTok, you've got you wrong. You're like, you just don't have your people right. Because see the way you say teacher. No, it's kids, and it's not brags. So it's teacher talks about kids, trying to. That's the thing. I know you messed it up, but it's just like these things. I know titles are hard. Sometimes I mess up titles and that, but it's just sometimes you just need to be like, it's just because the thing is that teacher is talking about the kids asking them questions. It's kids asking them questions. I know it's just these things can be complicated, but it's the kids asking them questions about them, not the other way around. So don't really see how that could ever be grooming. Like.
The account made to, mock the snowflake intolerant left would openly call for any teacher who comes out to their students to be fired on.
Wait, these people are teaching your kids. Any teacher comes out. Jesus fucking Christ. No offense, buddy, but once again, what about all the teachers who basically informed me about being straight? I remember a teacher once before, they discussed their relationship. I've had multiple teachers who've told me their status. Now, of course, in, I think, every single case, the status was that they were, straight. But the point is, they told me about their, sexual orientation, effectively. Okay, in this scenario, surely they should be fired too, because they haven't come out as not, they haven't come out as homosexual, but they come out as heterosexual, to me. To the class. I mean, what would you say about those teachers? Once again, this argument doesn't really work because inherently you can always react to it by simply saying, well, what about the straight teachers who inform their students about their straightness, if you know what I mean?
On the spot. Incidentally, the teacher referred to in that tweet I just showed said he came out to his students because a student asked him if he was gay because the student's parents said to the student that they thought he was gay because of his voice.
Okay, that's a bit homophobic, isn't it? Wow. Stereotypes, huh?
So the teacher was like, yeah, I'm gay. Fired! Anyway, that tweet and many others have been deleted. I wonder why. But so what you'd imagine here is that any halfway reasonable person would realize that this simply isn't what grooming is. Nor is it anything but hateful to compare teachers simply coming out to their students or promoting pride to a camp specifically for gay kids to being a child predator. It's nonsense. The kind of decades-old gibberish the Westboro Baptist Church would scream to nobody outside of a Comic-Con. And coincidentally, the account was apparently a source of inspiration for none other than Christina Pushaw, DeSantis' press secretary we mentioned earlier, who has claimed that this account somehow has evidence that grooming is happening. If you define grooming as a gay person breathing near a child and evidence as being mad at ghosts online. So there you have it, a single Twitter account promoting false news stories and run by a viral-hungry, hateful Trump supporter who, after being, big quotes, doxxed, claimed that her house was egged by posting literally the first photo that shows up when you Google house egged and then delete.
Now, I'm not sure if I have ever done this. Not this, obviously, but I mean, getting Google images. But interestingly, you do want to be careful with Google images because some of the images are copyright protected. I don't know why Google is allowed to show them just in a non-connected format, but they are still copyright protected, so you can't actually use them. So I would advise maybe using like a stock footage library that's you can actually legally speaking use, because this like
deleting it is actually being used as the factual justification behind this entire bill, and subsequently the completely baseless claim that it prevents grooming in any way. I can't stress this enough. None of this is about grooming. Like, it clearly is not. And yet this narrative has spun so wildly out of control that when Disney took an albeit cowardly stance against the bill,
I mean, first, Disney funded Ron DeSantis for ages. And they weren't like that. Oh, it was also because people were like pushing your man, because your man was like, you donate to Ron. You've got to come out against this, surely, because you donate to him. Like, it's this kind of they've got nothing to do with. Why are Disney? I don't know. Maybe because they pay you, Ron. They pay you lots of money, and they're just saying, maybe Ron, don't do this because we don't really like that people are angry at us because they don't like the fact that we're funding you, Ron.
Conservatives label them as pro-grooming, along with anyone who speaks up against the bill. That I can't stress this enough, doesn't in any way have anything to do with grooming. Like, yeah. I'm sure not about to defend a multinational corporation doing the bare minimum to support LGBTQ people, but it's wild that, well, a multinational corporation doing the bare minimum to support LGBTQ people is enough for the anti-cancel culture GOP to go scorched fucking earth when they dare to publicly oppose them.
Like, that's the thing, it's so funny. Disney just like, you shouldn't be homophobic, people we fund. It doesn't look great that we're like, actively suppressing movies and stuff like that have gay characters in them, and we're like, basically we only allow this just as a corporate thing, but like, it's just people kind of, they get angry because you're funded by us, so like we kind of have a responsibility to like look good. See, we can suppress movies and no one will ever know because we can just say, well, no, we just decided not to make that film that you wrote. But we can't really be like, oh no, we just decided not to do anything about the homophobe that we're actively paying, So, yeah. And then there's like, yeah, no, fine, we're going to strip you of your self-governing status.
And by scorched earth, I mean, relieving a corporation of billions in financial obligations and passing it on to...
In fairness, they could have chosen not to do that. They could have chosen to just make the corporation pay. This idea that, it's kind of some ideas people say like, oh, you can't tax billionaires because they'll just leave. And you're just like, arrest them. Don't let them leave. Just arrest them. So it's just like... Anyway, no, I'm not necessarily saying that you should arrest billionaires. I'm just saying, if the argument is, oh, they will just leave, then arrest them if they try to leave. Obviously. Anyway, so yeah, we'll just continue on, I guess.
The taxpayers. That'll show them. It's gotten so bad that even other Republicans aren't safe if they even think about straying off the narrative. When Nate Hochman, a fellow for the conservative magazine National Review, pointed out on Twitter that even if teachers are indoctrinating kids with gender ideology, that's not the same thing as pedophilia. A bunch of people, including intellectual powerhouse and normal chill guy James Lindsay, immediately accused him of being a groomer.
Oh my. Like, maybe you might want to look up the definition of groomer, buddy, because you might find out you're a bit of a one,
This does seem to be James's go-to response for everyone, ranging from California Representative Adam Schiff to random comedians on the internet to
sorry.
for everyone, ranging from California Representative Adam Schiff to random comedians on the internet to
True.
Oreo cookies. There's
Wait. Oreo cookies. That's
California Representative Adam Schiff to random comedians on the internet to Oreo.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ almighty. Interesting little Oreo fact for you. Oreos technically stole their ideas from another company. They have a better, name, but the product is pretty much identical. But, it's gone now.
Cookies. They're just throwing out words here and hoping it sticks. A plan the GOP operative and religious think tank weirdo Christopher Rufo has flat out admitted to regarding the CRT panic, and now this. For more info on Rufo, here's our CRT episode that he apparently saw and immediately went to Twitter to block me. But anyway, again, it's just throwing stuff out and conflating a bunch of.
Oh, don't you love the fact that people on the far right, fascists. It's like, yeah, Twitter's radical left. And it's like, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, you seem to use it a lot for all sorts of massive corporation that has made people billions. I don't think it's left. It's just a very funny thing of it's left wing. Sure. A good old fucking moron paid about 44 billion quid for it. Doesn't seem to be too left wing if the cost him 44 billion. That seems like a little bit overpriced if it was a left wing thing.
Of things under one fear-mongering umbrella, or even worse, flat out admitting that they consider any mention of LGBTQ people as dangerous grooming. This would be a downright archaic view of discussing sexual orientation. At best, it's childish in that you'd be conflating the words sexuality and sexual into one concept simply because it has the word sex in it. But again, Ben Shapiro literally called Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. I mean,
an indoctrinator of sexual ideology after he simply said the word gay a bunch. It's very funny that they pretend that's not what they're concerned about while literally being openly concerned about it,
Yeah.
You can't claim the bill isn't telling teachers not to say gay and then claim that tweeting the word gay is grooming kids. That's like saying you're not scared of spiders and then shitting your pants while watching Charlotte's Web.
That's an image.
At the end of the day, even though it is more insidious and will probably cause violence, the term groomer is basically being used as the new woke that was the new CRT that was the new SJW. It's a broad, vague term that conservatives use when they can't just flat out say what they mean, because what they mean is widely accepted as hateful when said aloud.
Yeah.
And they know this. They know that anti-LGBTQ stances are dying.
Are they though? Sorry to break it to you, Cody, but they're really, really, really fucking not. They're really not.
A 2021 PBS NewsHour poll found that when asked directly about whether or not trans people should have access to all the things these bills are trying to take away, 2/3 of Americans were against laws that would limit transgender rights. This wasn't just liberals either, but spread out through every ideology and age group. Young people are, of course, more accepting of racial and LGBTQ minorities than
Are they now? Well, not in my country, at least.
their parents and grandparents.
I remember I was listening to a discussion by 4 people, and one of them was like, "Oh, yeah, I think we should let them be, but not marry." And I had to just step in and be like, because they're like, "Oh, because of religion." You're a fucking idiot if you think your religious rights mean that other people can't marry. Because for one fucking thing, guess what? Your religious rights are bullshit because they were added to. So you're believing over the old stuff, the stuff that was actually taught by Jesus Christ, and then you're just believing the stuff that was added as propaganda so that people could have more control. You know.
And younger generations see changes to society and family structures as positives.
Yeah,
so
they know.
instead of saying anti-trans laws, they have to go with anti-groomer in the hopes of invoking irrational fear.
Thing is, though, kids are not actually. I would probably not as much now, but like when I was about, let's say, 3 years ago, and I was in school, I would probably hear a gay slur once a week, probably something like that. Something like that every single week. So,
Or, as we discussed, rational concerns.
Actually, it was more common in younger kids. So I remember, usually it would just be the word gay used as an insult. But then for younger kids, it'd be the F word. Well, F-A-G. Basically, yeah, that was more common for younger kids. So I don't think actually we are, young people are as a whole, progressive thing. I think that's nonsense, really. I think older people, they look at polling and they don't really think about it, which is that honestly, young people are almost worse in some ways. Like, people think of them, but you look upon it and you're like, that does not match up with who I've listened to. Maybe I just went to school with particular homophobic, transphobic, racist people, misogynists, but when you look at the kind of things where people are incredibly misogynistic and all these sort of things, and it's just kind of depressing, it just really is. And that's young people for you. Young people are not really progressive. It's an image that people like to project, but it's not really an accurate image.
Dealt with irrationally. Honestly, I'm surprised they don't do this more often. I mean, they absolutely do, but not nearly as much as they could. You want to limit healthcare rights? Call it health grooming instead. Why should the government pay to have some anatomy-obsessed stranger look inside of our bodies? I'm now against that. All pediatricians are pedophiles now. Both words start the same, don't they? However, unlike most of those previous words we mentioned, groomer and pedophile are actual terms that mean something. Especially to victims of sexual abuse.
True.
It is profoundly ironic that by co-opting those phrases, the people pretending to care about sexual abuse are actually making it harder for victims.
Oftentimes people with political things, they oftentimes miss the fact that no, some things are not, they're not, it could be this, could be that. No, some things should have a definition, I made a video before about a media company, and usually I agree with them, but they were saying some particularly stupid things about Elon Musk. But it's just like, that's nonsense. That's like just kind of factually incorrect. If you want to be accurate about it, it's not accurate at all. The words you're describing have definitions. You can't just like, oh well, they're not in the No, it's not. Doesn't matter about the conventional sense. There's definitions. If something is not in the definitions, then it's not really it. And yeah, as he says, it's just sort of.
After all, the same way terms like woke have lost all meaning, so too will these very. After all, the same way terms like woke have.
The dinosaurs awake to the injustice of people, is it? Interesting. And why is the dinosaur, why are they so why is that, how is that woke? Oh, fuck's sake. Oh my god almighty. Oh, that's the US sun. Okay. Yeah, American media is thicker. Well, it's still that's kind of true, but no, you'd say find the same thing in British media though. In fairness,
lost all meaning, so too will these very real concepts. If you call any old person that refuses to use your experimental submarine a pedophile, then you make it so people will automatically tune out actual credible accusations of pedophilia.
Yeah.
But again, and I really can't stress this enough, they don't actually care about pedophilia or groomers.
True.
If they did, they would perhaps be more concerned about the shocking pattern of Republican lawmakers getting in trouble for just that, including our good buddy Matt Gaetz being involved in a fucking sex trafficking scandal.
God.
And the last GOP president of the United States openly creeping on teenage beauty queens.
Yeah, like,
also,
fucking
the
sweat.
longest serving Speaker of the House, former GOP representative and convicted pedophile, Dennis Hastert. I'm not using the term pedophile or groomer loosely, like conservatives
Yeah.
are doing. These are literal cases of GOP figures getting in trouble for literal acts.
And keep in mind, they're just the ones who got in trouble. Like, you know, if they're the ones that got in trouble, think how many have done it, but haven't come, like, haven't actually, well, have come, but, you know, haven't actually, you know, had justice come, really, you know.
Acts against minors. Oh, also, you know who else the GOP loves who famously sexually abused children? Cops!
Yeah.
It's actually a big problem. Let me just read a few sentences out loud. A 2003 national study by the Police Professionalism Initiative written by Professor Samuel Walker at the University of Nebraska at Omaha found that 40% of reported cases of police sexual misconduct involved teens, often young women involved in youth engagement and
Yeah.
job shadowing programs.
Of course.
Let's see any more sentences to read. Ah, yes, okay.
Now, in fairness to the Americans, it's not just an American problem, it's all around the world. Well, no, all around the Western world specifically. So yeah, you'll find this in England too, and probably in Ireland as well, you know. The point is, at the end of the day, is that we all have this pedophile cop problem. Yeah, and I think we should all fix it. And there's one way to fix it. It's called, the death penalty for cops in a more, not in a justice type way, but in a more sort of like, you know, as a group way. Although we don't want mob rule, so, you know, maybe don't have that. But you know what I mean? Inherently, you know, that's one of the fucking problems with the police, isn't it? That just, you hand someone power and you just don't check it, and what do you expect will happen? You know, what do you expect will happen? Like, I don't mean, they'll turn into pedophiles. I mean, people who want to be pedophiles are going to obviously join the police force. What do you think would happen? You know? It's the same thing with CEOs and managers. If you give them power, yes, creepy people are going to go in for those positions. Sometimes it makes, you know, we can say that off by also offering high pay, so that, you know, also ordinary people who are greedy. So not great, you know. That's kind of thing. It's like, you can have a greedy person who will just like kill you for greed, or you can have a pedophile who will still probably kill you, but they also, you know, it's just kind of, yeah, kind of way. It's like, yeah, it's still not great, but the point is, there are of course certain institutions that don't pay well, but have a lot of power. That's the point, you know. Like, that's just a thing. Like, come on.
2010 study by the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank that tracks police wrongdoing, found that sexual misconduct by law enforcement generates more citizen complaints than any other factor except for excessive force. Surely I have more sentences. Oh, okay, yes, here we go. A database compiled by the Buffalo News reports that from 2005 to 2015, a law enforcement official was caught in a case of sexual abuse or misconduct at least every 5 days. There are still a lot of states where cops can rape detainees, say it was consensual, which is literally impossible because they're detained, and get away with it. Oh, and follow up on that 2003 study that found 40% of reported cases of sexual misconduct by cops to involve teens. Here's a separate study from 2014 that found reported cases of sexual misconduct involving teens to be 43.1%. So I guess cops can improve. Great job to the boys in blue.
Jesus.
Also, 15% of the victims were under 14. 8% were under 12. So, I don't know. It's just weird that we're not seeing any "don't say you're a cop" bills. Curious what that's about. None of this is subjective. These are just facts. You can agree with certain conservative policies or stances, but you can't deny that they have absolutely no fucking right to police teachers or LGBTQ people for the purposes of stopping grooming when there's zero evidence to back them up.
True.
It's just Cold, hard hate-mongering. And if you really need it spelled out, look no further than the now-failed Tennessee proposal that attempted to create an alternate pathway to legal marriage that would not be available to same-sex couples. First of all, petty. Petty, spiteful bill, which did crash and burn, but not before people pointed out that they had included absolutely no age limit to who could get
fucking God.
opening the door to literal child marriages. They went on to amend the bill to fix that, but this
Yeah, that's sort of the point, isn't it? Like, yeah, these people, they're... Oh, fuck. Yeah, that doesn't look great, does it? No. Bit of a fuck up there. Maybe, yeah.
perfectly points out how little the GOP actually cares about pedophilia or grooming.
Yeah.
And in fact, just wants to take away the rights of gay people. In writing this bill, they were either so focused on taking away these rights or just didn't care that they were ready to accept child brides so long as those child marriages weren't same-sex. Point is, this is all the exact opposite of everything.
For your information, I have a relative who had a teacher who was a groomer. But guess what? They were straight. They were a straight groomer. They still, groomed a lot of people. And guess what? They got away with it for a long time. A very, very, very long time. And that's sort of my point. At the end of the day, that person is just an example of just someone who managed to get away with that for a long time. They fathered a child, it's thought, from someone who they groomed. And just think about that. That's your groomer. Your actual groomer. So yeah. But anyway.
They claim to care about and should be rejected and mocked by anyone who isn't actively trying to attack the LGBTQ community, right? Like, you don't even have to be an advocate. If you think that everyone should have equal rights and that pedophilia is bad, you have no good reason to be supporting the majority of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
You should also be absolutely in awe that we're still dealing with this stuff today because, it is 2022.
If you're left-wing, you shouldn't be supporting a Democratic Party, though, either.
So how the are we still having this conversation? Didn't we federally legalize gay marriage 7 years ago, to which the world did not end? So why, dear sexy Christ who fucks frogs, are the GOP still trying to limit the rights of LGBTQ people? We're going to talk about just that, in detail, after a few ads. Because ads are just, they're so great.
Are they?
I love it when I'm really worked up about something important and have to stop everything to tell you about a fucking smart hairbrush or whatever.
Oh, you don't like the ads?
For years now, I've been trying to patent a universal translator that works by eating an entire Spanish language dictionary, but it turns out that my beloved invention might completely go to waste, and that's because I just heard about Babbel, a learning app that makes picking up a new language far easier than slowly consuming a bunch of paper.
Most of these apps are bull,
Or simply
So... just saying. I'm not saying it is definitely bull.
Or make you experts. You can choose from 15.
I'm just saying.
They offer an even live option when you go to Babbel.
I'm just saying,
Okay, we're back. So glad we stopped everything to tell you about a lentil delivery service that sends you farm fresh lentils straight to your door. Hold on. Start a business, mail order, send farm fresh lentils straight to your door. Perfect. It's gonna be so good. Okay, so
if you don't make it lentils, maybe. Although I don't have any money to do it, so it'd have to be free.
We were just finished pointing out that nothing in the recent GOP push against LGBTQ people has any logical standing. Next, we have to ask, why is this happening now? What is the Republicans' end game? What can we do about it? Can we do anything about it? And why, sweet horse god, why is it always DeSantis and Abbott? Why these two sopping dildos? Except sopping dildos implies they did a good job, so that's too polite. They're more like dusty attic dildos from the 40s that your grandmother tried once but got electrocuted by.
Oh my
one
God.
You found as a kid and used as a lightsaber until your mother intervened. Not pulling from real life or anything. Just an imaginative tale about how whenever I watch Star Wars, I think about how sex is evil. I'm fine. It was fine. But that last question, why these two bad dildos, is very easy to answer and begins to explain why these laws seem so broken. Simply put, thanks to Trump, bigotry is pretty popular right now. It's as big as the hit film Jupiter.
I don't think that's down to Trump. I think that Trump was just like two people. Oh yeah, you know you can support the Republican Party and be a racist fucking moron. Yeah, you don't have to just be economically right. You can be a fascist now. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean openly. Yeah. You could just be openly a little fascist. Everything's fine. You know? Because the president does it every single day, so yeah, great stuff. Also, Jupiter ascending.
Ascending. We've talked before at length about how the nascent proto-fascism that was the Trump presidency drew a line in the sand for the conservative movement.
I have to say, when it comes down to it, the real way of telling someone is a fascist is if they're like homophobic, and then they say the radical left are the people against them. Because then it's like, so if they're left than you, and you're a homophobe, then clearly you must be fascist. Because even libertarians, well actually not even conservatives rather, because libertarians actually inherently must be, you know, pro-gay relations. Because otherwise, well, how can you be libertarian then? Like, even conservatives are able to be, you know, not homophobe, but of course they are, you know, still gonna fuck you over. So don't vote for them. But you know what I mean? Like, no, vote the way you want to vote. But anyway, the point is though that that's how you can really tell someone's a fascist.
And how many Republicans, DeSantis in particular, have realized that the old traditional conservative way of doing things won't cut it anymore.
True.
Someone needs to step up and be the new Trump.
Yeah.
And since Trump is figuratively and literally melting at the moment, DeSantis is currently in the...
I mean, I don't think so. I don't think his support... You gotta be very careful though, because if you're not careful, DeSantis could be destabilized by a couple of scandals that like make him like, you know, stab Trump in the back, and next thing you're being hung just like Mike Pence was about to be, you know? So just be aware, Ron, if you're watching. I mean, I'm not saying I'd like to see you hung. I'm just saying, you know, certain things.
Lead for that position. Similarly, Abbott has been struggling with his popularity among this base of the GOP. And so there's just no easier way to gain points than by beating the dead horse of woke politics. They certainly aren't the only people doing this, but rather the most vocally desperate at the moment. You could argue that this explains why these laws seem so hastily written and legally incoherent, in that the people making them don't actually care what the law says. But it's not that simple. As we mentioned, the Don't Say Gay bill appears to have different wording in its preamble than the actual law, and is extremely vague about the actual age groups affected. This makes it so that depending on the courtroom and lawyers involved, you could actually get different interpretations of the bill.
True.
And this is actually the same for a lot of these half-assed laws being introduced. They're often incredibly inconsistent, and that's possibly because conservatives don't even really understand transness well enough to effectively legislate against it. Why, for example, is it legal for doctors to treat kids with human growth hormone to alter their bodies, but a crime for doctors to treat trans kids with estrogen or testosterone? How do these laws affect intersex people or people with hormone imbalances? Are puberty blockers still allowed to treat non-trans children for things like precocious puberty? Where do we draw any of these seemingly arbitrary lines? While it's pretty clear that these lawmakers don't understand the actual science, there are likely other extremely old factors at play.
Well,
writing for Slate, law professor Courtney Cahill draws parallels between the current-day attempt to define gender along biological lines and the Jim Crow-era practice of doing the exact same thing, but with race. Cahill looks at Bill HB 935, a piece of anti-trans legislation out of Florida that, while it eventually died in 2021, would have made it a crime for healthcare providers to surgically change the sex of minors. Cahill points out that by defining sex as the biological state of being female or male based on sex organs, chromosomes, and endogenous hormones.
Chromosomes are actually, like, they do change. So if you're going to be, that way, best to stick with sexual organs. Unfortunately, of course, you do have people who are intersex, so that won't work. Chromosomes also won't work because people have different chromosomes, You have the typical, but you will have, in some cases, where X and Y are not present in the ordinary, considered ordinary, the average sort of person, it's
profiles, and then implicitly defining breasts as a female sex organ by listing a mastectomy as a prohibited act when performed on a minor.
But the thing is, like, men can have breasts, and actually a lot do, so,
HB 935 would have legally made having breasts an essential part of the biological state of being female, except it wouldn't, obviously. As Cahill says, a cisgender Floridian woman would still be a woman even were she to not have breasts, and gaining breasts through hormones or surgery isn't enough for a trans woman to be legally considered a woman. That requires a legal sex change, which requires a note from your healthcare provider. It's the kind of pulling out the rug trick you can play on conservatives over and over again without them even ever coming up with a satisfactory response. Oh, womanhood is defined by being able to give birth? Are infertile cis women no longer women? Of course not. Oh, womanhood is defined by having a certain amount of testosterone in your blood. What about cis athletes with naturally high T counts? Are they no longer women? Still no? Gee, sure seems like this biological system is just an ad hoc way to exclude trans people.
Yeah, but like,
Cahill ties
it's almost always though a problem because inherently human beings are complex. So also the very strange argument of like, oh, they're in the minority, so that doesn't count. I've heard that argument before, and it would be funny if it wasn't so depressing. Like, this kind of idea of like, oh no, you can't take that because they're in the minority. It's like, what the fuck? Jesus Christ, like, this is just a bit, come on now.
And to similar attempts from the era to define race via various biological truths, which of course didn't work even a little bit because, as Cahill says, in practice, race regulations showed that legal race wasn't based on biological truths and wasn't absolute. The legal definition of race varied between states. Someone could be colored in Louisiana and white somewhere else. The legal definition of race also varied within states. The same person could be both colored and white depending on the official charged with making that assessment. Jim Crow eventually fell apart under the weight of all of its inconsistencies, and so too, Cahill says, will states' power to legally define sex as a binary between male and female.
Doesn't really
it's only
work
a matter
as a
of
binary.
time before all of the glaring problems with these bills.
The problem with defining things based on like a particular attribute, like, people who are like, the people that think there's 152 genders, like, okay, well, okay, clearly. No, but you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, but you're like, okay, but if you want to say these things are female, these things are male, well then, like, is my voice deep enough to be a man's voice? Is it? If it's not, well, okay, but then, you know what I mean? Like, all these things, it's like, okay, but then, what are you suggesting then? What happens if people are outside? And it's always an issue. Because always trying to fit people into boxes is a problem. Because people don't fit into boxes. It's not as simple as that, because people are different. The human mind is very different, This happens a lot in psychology. People are like, okay, well, you don't exactly fit into a particular box here, I mean, like, I guess, I've been looking at the things there before where it's like, you really see certain issues with trying to put people into a box, and that happens genuinely. That happens to all these things. It's always a problem because
finally start to cause problems for the conservatives passing them. And thanks to how loosely worded a lot of these laws are, they could easily be used for any purpose. Because it's not just how they define sex, but any attempt to turn subjective moral stances into absolutes. In Arizona, for example, they're pushing through a law aimed at limiting sexual content in school library books. It would give parents the right to demand a book get pulled lest the librarian be fired and barred from working in a public school.
Jesus Christ.
The original law specifically targeted books that promote the study of sex, sexual preferences, sexual activity, sexual perversion, sex-based classifications, sexual identity, or gender identity.
At times, I think that, people should just lean into this and just go, okay, fine. So basically, any relationship at all, any gender, so if someone is referred to at all as, a man or a woman, a boy or girl, because keep in mind, right, the problem with gender identity is that, for example, I'm a cis person, right? But that is still a gender identity, Being cis is still a gender identity. So if in a book you said someone was a boy, then that would instantly mean you've talked about gender identity because you've said they're a boy. Now that means whether or not they're trans or cis, it doesn't matter, because either way, it's a gender identity. Sexual identity, if they're straight, like all these things, it's always a problem. It's like, this would ban pretty much every single book that talks about gender. It's like not even talks about gender, that even has gender.
But after scrutiny, a lot of that was eliminated, leaving the official wording of the law to be, quote, "No public school district, public charter school, or public school library shall maintain in its inventory or promote books that make as their primary subject the study of sex, sexual lifestyle."
So make the primary subject. Okay, I guess that. But of course, what's primary subject? In those like Enid Blyton books where it's like an all, girls school, is that not, is that not like gendered? Is that not specific, like, is that part of the primary subject? It's all gets into a very complicated issue when you start defining primary subject. Like, surely you wouldn't have to bring up the author. What happens if the author is dead? Okay, so then we just have to sort of guess. Like, books that make as their primary subject, the only way to know that is to ask the author, what's your primary subject for this book? And if the author is not alive anymore, maybe they were a good person, maybe they're a wrong person. So I'm not going to necessarily say all authors, rest in peace. But the point is, if the author is not alive anymore, then you have no way of maintaining that, and you have no idea. For all you know, maybe the person was, it's like, oh, no, it's discussing this. I know it's not obvious, but the primary subject, it's kind of like a secretive one. It's a metaphor for this. It's like, okay, so then that can be argued for almost anything. This really does not work.
Or sexual activity, or books that are of a controversial nature that a reasonable parent or legal guardian would want to know of or approve of prior to their child being exposed to it. And what does that even mean? What books have a primary subject being sexual lifestyles? Does study of sex mean no sex education books? And how do you define what a reasonable parent is and what they'd want to know about these books? It's very clear they were trying to ban books that feature LGBTQ stories, but this new law can be so loosely interpreted so that you could oppose pretty much any book with a romantic storyline.
Yeah.
Or rather, it doesn't ban any book if you're targeting books that are primarily about sexual activity. Like, wouldn't that just ban erotic novels? Something that isn't in a school to begin with? At least not the cool ones, of course. It comes down to this, I think.
The thing is, I remember, what was it for? I'm not sure what year it was. I forget what year it was now. But I remember one of the books someone wrote was particularly weird. It was a particularly weird book. It was not like it was like, but that surely you'd want to ban that, wouldn't you? But you didn't. So, but of course, that is the child's choice, surely, isn't it? To to read that oftentimes.
Let's say you have a story about a person asleep who needs to be kissed by a prince in order to break a spell and wake up.
Yeah.
If that person is a woman, then that kiss is not sexual. However, if the person is a man and the prince kisses that man, then it is instantly sexual to these people.
Okay.
The existence of gay people automatically makes them think about sexual activity. That's what happens
That's kind of creepy. It kind of implies you want to fuck that person, just saying.
in their little brains, and it's one reason why it's impossible to talk to them about this. Others being they're bigots and liars, but whatever. This is all not to mention that legislating what someone is allowed to learn about or do with their own bodies flies directly in the face of the small government anti-cancel culture narrative Republicans have been attempting to weed for the
you do what you want as long as you're not harming anybody else. Well, why not this? That's not okay? Oh, but why?
past many decades. But of course, that's not a new contradiction. The hypocrisy is almost not even worth mentioning. Republicans have always wanted to have their cake and not sell it to a gay couple too. They want Uncle Sam to f*** off and leave everyone alone until it comes to all the things they absolutely want the federal government to dictate, like reproductive rights and marriage.
Or sometimes it's just like, no, we don't want the federal government. We want all states. You know, like the Civil War. You know, it's like states, right? Although not really. Like, we don't want the federal government to announce this, but we want your state governments to announce it. It's like, not big government, but also all government, if you know what I mean. It's like, we don't want you, we want to keep those slaves, so yeah, we want you to have slavery as well, so you give us back our slaves, yeah, cause, we're for states' rights, definitely. Fuck your rights, though. Specifically, our state rights imposed on you through your state, and if necessary, the federal. Okay, yeah. So it breaks down completely.
Quality and, sexy, erotic books about vas deferens and all the goop that lives inside of us. Of course,
Blood.
By hiding behind pedophilia,
Fire.
they can at least try and mask this by wrapping their dry little hate turd in a tortilla of think of the children. And again, this is not a new strategy by any means. In the 1970s and 1980s, right-wing religious figures depicted gay men as depraved predators who groomed or recruited children, and similar rhetoric appeared again in the mid-2000s as Democrats and Republicans alike fought against legalizing gay marriage, something that a lot of politicians and pundits are definitely still against, but have to pretend like they aren't. What I mean is that despite how they tiptoe around it, people like Ron DeSantis...
What was the one who was like, after the Roe v. Wade decision, they're like, this is a victory for white life. You're like, oh, for fuck's sake, that's, wow, that's something else, isn't it? Wow, that's something else, yeah. It's...
and Greg Abbott and most of the GOP would happily move us back to a time where LGBTQ people had zero rights. It's why, when asked point blank, they often give answers like this.
I don't want any discrimination in Florida. I want people to be able to, live their life, whether you're gay, but also whether you're religious. And I think you should be able to do that. And I don't want them discriminating.
Okay, so you think it's discrimination. So let's say I indoctrinate you into a cult, and then once you're in my cult, I say, well, I want my cult members to have their rights. They believe this stuff, that's their beliefs. So they should be allowed to burn all those people every Sunday night, because that's their belief. Their belief is that they should be burned, Where did they get that belief? Oh, that was from me. Yeah, it was, yeah. Oh, I don't really believe that. I just want to kill those people because I'm not one of those people. So I think if they're gone, then it means I can rise to the top. So it's kind of a benefit for me. So it is. It's like, yes, obviously the issue with religion is that, especially with Christians, is that their religion has basically been attacked and used as a marketing tool for power hungry people. And it's kind of depressing to see the history of the Christian religion, see how it sort of fell into just power-hungry people's hands. But it did. So maybe next time you go to your little cult service, think about the history of it and think about the teachings of it. Also, Ron, Jesus was technically a socialist, so maybe don't have the argument of like, you know, because he kind of breaks down the argument, doesn't it?
Against as well. So, we're going to have, we got a big diverse state, and that's just the way it is.
Oh yeah, do I think gay people should have rights and be protected? I mean, I think all things should be protected. All words are good, really, and letters that are in the words, like, did you think about religious people? That's also a word. So to directly answer your question, I think religious people deserve rights. Meanwhile, his actual actions, such as leaving LGBTQ people off of anti-discrimination laws, speak much louder than fumbled words. But they can't just say it anymore. Just like when Ben Shapiro has to claim he's not against gay marriage, but the government getting involved in all marriage.
I think the government ought to be completely out of the business of marriage. I think the government sucks at everything, is my short message for today.
Okay, well, Ben, you suck at everything too, so you stay out of everything as well. So fuck off, Ben.
The government is terrible at everything. If the government's goal was to forward traditional...
Yes, once again, Ben, you are terrible at everything as well, so let's be accurate. If you want to tell the government to fuck off, then fuck off yourself. So fuck off, Ben. Why do you keep...
Marriage, it utterly failed. Obviously, as proof...
But you don't mind it being out of...
Wait, what is Ben saying?
Goal was to forward traditional marriage. It utterly failed.
So if the government goal what? Okay, so first of all, traditional is a very, very dodgy term to be lobbying about because it inherently causes problems when you actually look at historical things. Like, when do you mean tradition? Because, like, human beings have been around for, like, thousands of years, Ben. So do you mean the earliest tradition? Do you mean when marriage was first invented? Because that traditional marriage included gay marriage. But then later stuff, still a significant number of years ago, you're right, Ben, that's still a tradition. But it depends on what tradition, Like, traditions change, and then people have their own traditions. And which traditional marriage do you mean? Do you mean, like, the white European traditional marriage? Or do you mean, what's meant by traditional marriage in that sense? Because, at Christmas time, some families, for example, have a particular tradition. That's not everyone's tradition. If that family became the government and they're like, oh, we want to protect the tradition, but it's like, but that's not our tradition, though. That's not everyone's tradition. So don't push that on the people, because then it becomes a tradition by force. So it seems like a bit of a dodgy one,
Obviously, as proof.
But you don't mind it being out of the business of traditional marriage at all.
No, right? I think the government should be out of all marriage.
Ah, yes, all marriage.
Okay, but then so Ben, when you get married, and you say, okay, how do you get legally married then? How is marriage then not just a concept you've just come up with? Because, like, obviously not an original concept, but it's still a concept you've technically come up with, because, then you wouldn't be legally married. You'd just be married because you said so. The whole point of the government is that you're now legally married in the government's eyes. In the government's eyes, you're now married. That's sort of the point of the government, Ben. But yeah, maybe, I guess Ben wants to remove all marriage, because that's kind of what, if you remove the government's involvement in marriage, you kind of have to remove all marriage of everything. Like, marriage in general would have to be gone because you wouldn't have legal marriage.
Matters or something. Ben is totally cool with gay people, except coincidentally whenever the government gets involved with granting them equal rights, and also when someone tweets the word gay, apparently.
Yeah, he makes himself sound like a pedophile himself.
And I guess what I'm getting at here is that Courtney Cahill's assessment that these laws are similar to Jim Crow laws is pretty apt. I mean, obviously there are many historical differences, and I'm not going to compare them one to one. But the Jim Crow era began roughly 10 years after slavery was abolished, and the laws were enacted mainly in southern states. In retrospect, they really seem like a last-ditch attempt to maintain the power dynamics of slavery, labeling non-white individuals as second class and proclaiming honky superiority. I can't stress enough that racial segregation and history can't really be compared to LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
But you can't help but see the similarity. The GOP lost when it came to same-sex marriage.
Well,
they lost like losers. Only 4 Republicans voted in favor of it, and 3 of them were immediately voted out for doing so. And now, almost 10 years later, this same party is clearly trying to find ways for individual states
who is the 4th one? I wonder now.
Pass laws that bring them back to an era where LGBTQ people didn't have so many pesky rights. They don't care if the laws make sense or can be easily defeated in courts. What matters is that they keep that ball in the air for as long as possible. Delay this obvious progress in the hopes that they can keep their own superiority intact. They're just prolonging their existence at the expense of others, like vampires, or more commonly known, Balaam Abrasax from the hit film Jupiter Ascending. And just like Jim Crow laws and the runtime of Cloud Atlas, this could last way longer than it has any right to.
True.
Because ultimately, these conservatives just don't like gay people. But no, they can't say that. That's why these laws are so weird and vague.
Well, they could say that. They're just not going to, because that would be a little bit, wouldn't sound diplomatic, would it?
Nonsensical, because they're all trying to find loopholes around blatantly stating their prejudice. And for that reason, and just like Jim Crow laws, these anti-LGBTQ laws will ultimately fall apart. I mentioned this run of laws aimed at allowing medical professionals to deny care based on their conscience. As one South Carolina bill states, no medical practitioner, healthcare institution, or healthcare payer should be compelled to participate in or pay for any medical procedure or prescribe or pay for any medication to which the practitioner or entity objects on the basis of conscience, whether such conscience is informed by religious, moral, ethical, or philosophical beliefs or principles. That bill also protects those practitioners from legal repercussions for discrimination. And while this is clearly aimed at trans people, they aren't allowed to just flat out say that. And so because of the extremely vague wording, it could be used to discriminate against literally anyone based on philosophical beliefs. By that definition, a vegetarian doctor could legally choose to not treat you because you're wearing a leather jacket. Hell, they could not treat you for liking the band Stained, which frankly should come with a penalty, but not from doctors. It is hard to fully appreciate the fact that when you get down to it, this proposed law is basically saying to doctors, do no harm unless they bother you. It is so broadly defined so as to be both ineffective and legally explosive, and if enforced, could gunk up the system so bad that it ultimately gets thrown out, along with all the other laws trying to do that.
Oh, don't you worry, they'll go straight to the, well, not straight, but like, they'll go up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will say it's fine.
Yes. Of course, I do want to be very clear here. These laws are bad, cruel, harmful laws that in the immediate short term will absolutely have a negative impact on the LGBTQ people, primarily children being affected by them. Trans people in the U.S. already face incredibly high barriers of entry to the basic possibility of participating in public life. They're banned from equal education, targeted by state departments, prevented from receiving life-saving medical care, harassed in bathrooms no matter which one they use. The list goes on. We didn't even mention all of the recent attempts to ban trans athletes, which could be an entirely separate episode. Not only are these things bad on their own, but they have the added effect of preventing trans people from entering the formal labor market, let alone acquiring the huge expense of medical transition, assuming they survive that long, considering how often they get f***ing murdered or take their own lives. The current legislative pushes aim to permanently confine queer people, especially trans people, to the informal economy, and in some states actively criminalize their existence. Fire the teacher for saying he's gay? They want people to be afraid to exist, is what they want.
Yeah.
If the push succeeds, if these bills pass in any widespread way, the state will have effectively declared itself cisgender and heterosexual for the first time, in the same way that under Jim Crow it declared itself white. These laws frame themselves as making moral arguments about the validity of trans existence, and they are doing that, but they're not only doing that.
Yeah.
Gender-affirming care, for example, is not only moralized as self-mutilation and or child abuse, it's also framed as prohibitively expensive and as a luxury.
Yeah.
A cosmetic procedure in the same category as lip fillers, or an expensive dye job, or getting metal teeth so you can bite open beer cans. It's not a coincidence that the defunding of reproductive health, the banning of abortion, and the goal of banning contraception are all tied up in the...
Like, I have to say, if you're banning contraception now that like it wasn't banned before, your country's going backward. Your country's really going backward, because even my country has realized banning contraception is a very fucking stupid thing to do, not having funding for healthcare is a stupid thing to do, because people will die.
Political and legal strategy of anti-trans policies. By relegating all trans-adjacent healthcare to the private sector and then relegating trans people to lower, second-class citizens, the state can effectively prohibit transness altogether without having to put it into law. And that is a scary, terrible thing.
Yeah. Oh, God.
However, the light at the end of this very long, dark tunnel is this.
Very long.
Look back on this treatment of trans people in the same way we look back on the Jim Crow era today.
Will it, though? Will it? Because I have to ask. We're reaching a point. Our climate is failing. No longer can you keep those laborers working now. Those laborers are going to die. And eventually we'll reach a point in which we realize that yes, that time that billionaires said they wanted to move workers into space, they were being real, because they know you are only bringing a few workers with you if you move to another planet. It's not really a viable option to move loads. So the humans are going to begin to die. And the problem is, who'll write the history books? Because I'm pretty sure the billionaires, they'll want to ensure that they're remembered in a good way. And unfortunately, the racist ones that have the most money are unlikely to be too prone to looking back on this as a bad time, to be honest. Our existence as a race is going to end. As a species is going to end. Existence as a whole, as a thing, even possibly as a planet. Obviously that planet physically, but as a whole, as a life on a planet, may end. But it appears, if it doesn't, it's almost worse.
With disgust, shame, and the lingering feeling that if you'd paid slightly better attention during 11th grade history, you might be able to know what's going on more often. The conservatives are fighting a losing battle, and it's the exact same losing battle they've been fighting every 30 years for the past 150 years. This is possibly the fatal flaw with conservatism as an ideology altogether. Despite what the hit film Cloud Atlas might tell you, time moves forward whether we like it or not, and we move right along with it, whether you like it or not. Progressivism, making progress, feels intuitive and natural because we really have no other option other than to move with the current. And to try to do anything else means not only standing still, but pushing back against the flow and attempting to reverse the tide. Because that's where the conservative side of things takes us, in the end. Do you think, seriously, that people like James Lindsay and Ben Shapiro and Ronald DeSantis want to stop at just these anti-trans laws?
Yeah, of course not.
Perhaps, will they keep pushing us backward little by little? But again, people like them have been fighting this same fight over and over again with different goalposts because they keep losing. Before this, they lost the fight for gay marriage. And before that, they lost the civil rights movement. And before that, they lost to the suffragist movement. And before that, they lost the fucking Civil War. It's all the same fight, and we're already seeing with the Don't Say Gay bill and the recent resurgence of conflating queerness and pedophilia that if they win the fight against trans people, they'll immediately push back towards their next battleground. And so on until every minority group has been stripped of their rights and America is great again. It's like an incredibly high-stakes game of Team Fortress 2, except instead of fighting for glowing checkpoints, you're fighting for the basic human rights of marginalized people. Don't know, haven't played it. The point I'm
also, the thing is, unless Cody is a lot richer than he appears to be, the Cody eventually will be the one who gets shoved down into the pit of despair and the pit of death. Because yes, eventually you'll hear this from history. Not too long ago, you didn't have the right to vote if you didn't own a bunch of property. So of course, that meant even if you were a white, straight, cis man, you still didn't have equal rights because you weren't rich.
trying to make here is that if the last century of American history can serve as any kind of precedent, the conservatives will lose this fight eventually.
Will they
That
now?
said, how fast they lose depends on us and how hard we fight against them and point out what obviously lying liars they are. And of course, saying we'll win eventually doesn't do shit for the kids who are right this moment being targeted by laws either currently or about to be on the books.
Yeah.
So, on the screen, there should be a bunch of different links to organizations dedicated to helping trans and LGBTQ youth, and all those links will be somewhere in the description as well. So you can click on them and then be taken to their website and then give them money in the form of a donation. In fact, right this second, the Wachowski sisters are running an auction where all of the proceeds go to the Defend Trans Youth Fund. That auction is for various props from their beloved films such as Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending, which are really popular and cool films. Don't believe me? How many times have you heard those films brought up in just the last hour? Everyone's talking about them. And so right this second, you can get the actual ears worn by Kane Wise, the half-dog man, and also help trans youth. That's a win-win, assuming you get it before we use our show budget to swipe that up. And to sweeten the deal, if every single person subscribed to Some More News on YouTube donates at least $1 to a trans charity of your choice, I, Cody F. Johnston, will purchase and eat those rubber ears. That's a Some More News promise, so you know it's real. Or maybe I won't do that. I don't know. Is my name even Cody? Maybe not, and I probably won't eat those ears. But I'm still gonna try to get those stupid man dog ears. Or maybe this sweet whatever that is from Cloud Atlas. And you should still donate to, like, not be a jerk. And if you know a trans teen personally, do the right thing and just, leave them alone. Because like all teens, they probably just want to be left the f*** alone.
Yeah.
Or cigarettes. Give them cigarettes. Teens love them.
No, don't do that. I mean, they will love it, most likely, but that's... Some things,
I am being told that I can't advise people to give cigarettes to teens because of laws or something. But as we've just pointed out, laws can be bad, so... do what you want with that.
I'm not sure if that's a good place to leave that, to be honest. Hopefully he'll come back. I'm waiting. I am waiting.
Smoking!
Oh, no. It did not.
Oh, no. What do I say? What do I say? Ah, jeez, it's the end of the thing. Oh, yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. And be sure to, the alert bell or whatever. That's a YouTube thing. The links in the description also exist. And...
Did you?
Podcast. It's called Even More News. It's also this podcast. This is a show. This show that you watch as a podcast is available. Patreon.
It is. Now, of course, here we go. And so I'm just going to go ahead and say, yeah, if you want to go ahead and you want to like their video, I'm going to like the video and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, thank you for watching. And yeah, hopefully, I guess... you'll come back next time. At the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I think, really looking at this, it really, nihilism is one of those things where people appear to be going down. Because at this point, what do? You have no rights. And inherently, we... As a human race, will most likely crumble, and possibly that might be even a good thing, because there'll be no more evil people if there's no more people. Anyway, kind of depressing, but anyway, yeah. Thank you for watching, yeah, and hopefully you'll come back next time, I guess. Bye.